I want to tell you a beautiful story about my mom of blessed memory. My mom and I, for basically the last 20 years, really never had a fight, an argument, a crossword with one another, except on one occasion that would repeat itself. You see, we just kind of went with the flow of things. If she did something that frustrated me, I dealt with it. I did something that frustrated her, she dealt with it. We came to the agreement I would not help her with technology. That was not going to happen. I gave that to my children. They helped her with technology. That solved a lot of the frustrations that we had. But the one argument that we had that really used to bother me so much is I wanted my mom to come up for the holidays and spend them with me. And if she didn't want to spend them with me, I was totally fine if she chose to spend them with either of my brothers in Detroit or Atlanta. But I didn't want her, as she was getting older, to potchkey around in the kitchen and host and do all of the things that she was doing. And she would always fight me and say, my community's here, they need me here, I want to be here, I don't want to bother you, you've got too much going on. And it was a real source of contention for us for many years, until I worked really hard to just bite my tongue and deal with it for the last few years. But it bothered me. It bothered me a lot that in those years of her life that she wasn't spending Rosh Hashanah or Passover with us or with my siblings. She came up often, thank God. And we saw her often, thank God. And we traveled with her often, thank God. It wasn't an issue of not seeing her. It was an issue of I wanted these special moments to be with her. And she would fight me on it regularly. My mom died around 2 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday morning. And Thursday morning, Dory and the kids and I flew down to Florida for what would be a memorial service in her community on Friday, and then her burial in Michigan on Sunday. We walked into her empty house, and I sat at her desk in her chair where she had sat at just hours before she left this world. And right at the desk, open fresh in front of me, was a letter. And I opened the letter, and it read as follows. Dear Barbara, thank you so much for having me for Rosh Hashanah lunch. The food was delicious. I loved the people at the table. But most of all, I had nowhere else to go. And right there, right then, I understood why my mother never came up for the holidays. Now, maybe it was because she had served in the role of Rebbitzin for 50 years, and she was a Rebbitzin par excellence. Or maybe it was because she was the daughter of Leah and Dave Wolin, who opened up their home every single Shabbos and holiday to any and every guest in the community and served and entertained. Or maybe it was just in her DNA. But she knew that if she came up for the holidays, she would have a wonderful time and she would eat well and be with her children and grandchildren. But she also knew that there were a whole host of people who had nowhere else to go, and that she could open up her home and make sure that they had a Rosh Hashanah, or in some cases, a Passover meal. Never once did she tell me that was the reason why she didn't come up. Never once. But once I read that note, I knew. It all crystallized. It all made sense. And it was the perfect embodiment of the way that my mom lived. She did things that were important and that mattered, and she did it without fanfare. She did it without looking for recognition, and she did it with humility, and she did it with grace. I tell you this story for two reasons. One, I want to boast about my mom. And two, the prayer that the cantor is about to intone is all about the notion of humility. Today's world, for all of us, you and me, all of us, we struggle more and more with humility because there are so many outlets where we can flaunt our successes, our achievements, that which we've done. We have social media, we have YouTube, we have podcasts and blogs where all of us have an opinion and a thought, and all are welcome to be shared somewhere or somehow. But how many of us do something really meaningful that can change the world or turn a person's heart or make them feel loved and hugged, where otherwise they would absolutely be forgotten and abandoned. Absolutely. And we do it just for the reward that it gives us without anyone else knowing, without telling anybody else. That's the way my mom lived her life. And I will tell you, it is the most beautiful inheritance for me and my brothers and our spouses and our children to have. And it's also an important reminder for us that as the cantor asks for this moment of humility in leading us in the Musaf prayer for Rosh Hashanah, to be humble before God, that all of us have moments that we can add to our humility, that we can increase our grace, that we can do things that hug and embrace and make others feel loved without putting it on the internet, without sharing it with the news media, without celebrating it for the world, but just for the reward of the mitzvah itself. That's a life worth living and a legacy worth celebrating.